He ripped the card from my hand between the microecon shelves. His fist connecting with my cheekbone, the entire store fell silent except for the beep of the card reader. He thought it was my card. 2 hours later, in the back office, the manager pulled up the transaction log and asked quietly, "Do you know who this card belongs to?" I nodded. The chair of the board of trustees. That night, I sent a 172-line email statements, camera footage, procurement policies, and a report fraud button. By morning, his card was frozen, his construction company's accounts locked, and I stood before the mirror, reapplying a bandage, telling myself, no more silence. My name is Marin Hale, and I was 28 years old the night my stepfather made his final mistake at the Rookridge campus bookstore. The evening shift usually crawled by restocking textbooks, processing online orders, watching undergrads panic over course materials they should have bought weeks ago. I was arranging a fresh shipment of intermediate microeconomics texts when the purchase order caught my eye. Corporate P-card, pre-authorized for $47,000. The name on the authorization made me pause. Alexandra Vale, chair of the Rookridge Foundation Board of Trustees. I knew that name. Hell, I owed my graduate studies to that name. The foundation's merit scholarship was the only reason I could afford my MBA while working nights at this bookstore. The order was extensive laptops, tablets, high-end calculators, video equipment. Standard protocol demanded ID verification and digital signature confirmation for any P-card transaction over $5,000. I just placed the card in the verification tray when I heard the familiar heavy footsteps. Marin? Eddie Brantley stood at my counter, my mother Colleen hovering behind him like a nervous shadow. 6 years of marriage to my mother hadn't softened his edges, if anything. His mid-tier construction business had given him new ways to throw his weight around. "Eddie," I kept my voice neutral, professional. "Can I help you?" He gestured at a shopping basket loaded with power tools and electronic equipment. "Need you to ring this up. Equipment for the new dorm renovation project. Do you have a purchase order? This looks like about $8,000 worth of..." "Just use the company card." He meant the P card still sitting in my verification tray. Alexandra Vale's card. "That's not how this works. This card requires specific authorization for designated purchases. I can't just..." "Don't give me that bureaucratic bullshit." His face reddened. A warning sign I'd learned to recognize. "My company's doing work for Rookridge. This is Rookridge equipment. Process the damn purchase." "Eddie, I literally cannot process unauthorized purchases on someone else's P-card. It's not just against policy, it's fraud. If you need equipment for a Rookridge project, submit a purchase request through proper channels." My mother finally spoke, her voice thin. "Marin, honey, can't you just help out this once? Eddie's on a tight deadline." "Colleen, this isn't about helping. It's about you being a spiteful little bitch, like always." Eddie leaned across the counter. "Still pissed I wouldn't co-sign your apartment lease last year. Grow up." Actually, I was still pissed he'd tried to force me to co-sign a $200,000 equipment loan for his business 6 months ago, claiming it would help build my credit. I'd refused, and he'd made my mother's life miserable for weeks. "Sir, I need you to step back from the counter." His hand shot out, grabbing for the P-card. I tried to pull the tray back, but he was faster, stronger. His thick fingers closed around the card. "Eddie, that's not..." "Shut up." He held the card up to the reader. "See easy. The transaction won't process without verification. You need a PIN and biometric." That's when he snapped. His fist came around hard and fast, catching me on the left cheekbone. The impact sent me stumbling backward into the textbook display. Books cascaded to the floor as I went down, my shoulder hitting the corner of a metal shelf. The store went silent. 3 undergrads frozen mid-aisle. My coworker Marcus standing slack-jawed by the registers. 2 campus security cameras and 1 transaction terminal camera recording everything. Eddie swiped the card again, jabbing numbers into the PIN pad. Of course it didn't work. He didn't have Alexandra Vale's authentication codes. "Fucking useless system." He threw the card at me where I sat among scattered textbooks. "And you're fucking useless too." Marcus finally found his voice. "Sir, I'm calling campus security." "We're leaving." Eddie grabbed my mother's arm. She looked back at me once, her eyes full of an apology she'd never voice. I stayed on the floor for a moment, tasting blood where my teeth had cut my cheek. The P card lay beside me, its gold chip catching the fluorescent lights. He'd thought it was mine. He'd thought he could intimidate me into enabling his fraud. Just another small violence in our years of circling each other. He had no idea whose card he'd just tried to steal. Marcus helped me up, already pulling security footage on his tablet. "You okay, man? We got all of it. Every angle." I picked up Alexandra Vale's card, noting the timestamp on the failed transaction attempts. 8:47 p.m. Transaction denied. Security flag auto-triggered. "I'm fine," I said, though my shoulders screamed otherwise. "But I need to document everything, right now." The campus health center confirmed what I already knew. Bruised cheekbone, mild shoulder sprain, nothing broken. The nurse took photos for documentation while I filled out an incident report. My manager, Derek, had already flagged the transaction attempt in the system and started pulling security footage. "Corporate's going to want a full review," Derek said, looking pale. "That was Alexandra Vale's card. Do you understand what that means?" I understood perfectly. The Rookridge Foundation didn't just fund scholarships, it controlled a $400 million endowment that kept the university running. Alexandra Vale personally oversaw every major financial decision. "I need to go," I said, holding the ice pack to my face. "I'll have my full statement to you by morning." Instead of going home, I drove to a converted warehouse in the Arts District. My half-brother Rowan had claimed the top floor after his tech startup got acquired. We'd barely spoken in 3 years. Family gatherings got complicated when your mother remarried a man who tried to shake down her eldest son for a business loan. Rowan answered on the second knock, his expression shifting from irritation to concern when he saw my face. "Jesus, let me guess, Eddie." "Can I come in?" He stepped aside. The loft looked like a minimalist's fever dream: concrete floors, exposed beams, and enough monitors to run a small NASA mission. Rowan grabbed a better ice pack from his freezer and handed me a beer. "So," he said, settling into a designer chair that probably cost more than my car, "you finally going to do something about him?" "What makes you think I haven't tried?" "Because you're still showing up to family dinners, still playing nice, still pretending Mom's marriage is salvageable." He studied me with programmer's eyes, looking for patterns, vulnerabilities, exploitable code. What changed? "He tried to steal a P card, not mine, Alexandra Vale's." Rowan whistled low. "He's dumber than I thought. What's your play?" "I don't know yet." I pulled out my laptop. "But something's bothering me. Eddie mentioned his company's doing dorm renovations. I need to check something." I logged into my Rookridge email. Perks of being a grad assistant included basic access to the Foundation's public-facing systems. It took me 20 minutes of searching through procurement announcements to find what I was looking for. "Shit," I muttered. "What?" I turned the screen toward him. Brantley and Sons renovation. They've won 16 separate contracts in the last 9 months, all under $50,000. So the threshold for competitive bidding is $50,000. Anything under that can be direct awarded. I pulled up another screen. "Look at these amounts: $49,750, $49,900, $48,500. He's splitting projects to avoid scrutiny." Rowan leaned in. "That's definitely sketchy, but not necessarily illegal if the projects are legitimately separate." "Right, but look at this." I opened a PDF from 5 months ago. Renovation Assessment Committee meeting minutes. See who signed as the compliance assistant. He read aloud, "Meeting notes reviewed and approved by Marin Hale, assistant to the compliance officer." He looked up. "You're the compliance assistant." I did a summer internship with the Foundation's compliance office last year. Ended in August. I zoomed in on the signature. "That's not my signature." "You're sure?" I pulled up a legitimate document from my internship, a cafeteria vendor audit I'd actually signed. The signatures weren't even close. My real signature was barely legible, a quick scrawl. The forgery was neat, practiced, like someone had traced it from a template. He's been using my name to validate his contracts. My hands shook slightly. If this comes out wrong, it looks like I've been helping him rig bids. Rowan stood, pacing. Okay. So he's not just violent and stupid, he's been running a long-term procurement fraud. The assault tonight was what? Intimidation. Keep you in line. Or desperation. Maybe he needed that equipment for a project he'd already invoiced. I found another document. Holy shit. Look, he billed Rookridge for $47,000 in specialized renovation equipment last month, the exact amount on tonight's purchase order. So he already got paid for equipment he never bought, and was trying to use Vale's card to buy it retroactively. I sat back, the pieces clicking into place. He must have thought I'd cave if he pressured me in person. When I didn't, he snapped. Rowan stopped pacing. The question is, do you want him arrested for assault, or do you want to destroy him? I thought about my mother's hollow eyes, the 6 years of walking on eggshells, the small violences, the arm grabs, the thrown plates, the financial manipulations, all legal, technically, all just under the threshold of prosecutable. Why not both? I said quietly. Rowan smiled the cold, sharp smile that had helped him dismantle 3 competitor companies. That's my sister. What do you need? Time, and maybe some help understanding how deep this goes. You'll have both. He pulled out his phone. I still have a forensic accountant on retainer from the acquisition, very good at finding patterns in financial data. I touched my swollen cheek, wincing. I should feel guilty. Mom's going to be devastated. Mom chose him over us, Rowan said flatly. Repeatedly, you don't owe her your silence. He was right. I'd spent years being the good daughter, keeping quiet, not making waves. But tonight, Eddie had crossed a line. He'd put my name on his crimes, made me complicit. I opened a new document and started typing, Confidential Procurement Irregularities and Assault Report, Brantley & Sons Renovation. 172 lines later, I had everything documented, the assault, the attempted fraud, the pattern of split contracts, the forged signatures. Where are you sending that? Rowan asked. Everywhere that matters. I attached the security footage Derek had sent me. General Counsel, Internal Audit, and Alexandra Vale herself. It's almost midnight. Then she'll have something interesting to read with her morning coffee. I hit send. My phone buzzed immediately. Derek confirming receipt of the footage by campus police. Another buzz automated confirmation from the Foundation's fraud hotline. The last notification made me pause. An email response, sent at 11:47 p.m. From A. Vale at Rookridge Foundation. Org to M. Hale at Rookridge. EDU. Re-confidential procurement irregularity. Proceed. Full freeze. I'll handle board. 6 words that would end Eddie Brantley's business. He just didn't know it yet. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I transformed Rowan's dining table into a war room, mapping out exactly how Eddie had manipulated Rookridge's procurement system. You need to think like compliance, I told myself, falling back on everything I'd learned during my internship. The Foundation's chief compliance officer, Margaret Russo, had been a former federal prosecutor. She'd taught me that financial crimes were like spiderwebs. Pull one thread, and the whole structure reveals itself. First thread. The P-card system. Rookridge used a 3-tier approval structure. Purchases under $5,000 needed department head sign-off. Up to $50,000 required competitive quotes unless exempted. Anything higher triggered full bidding procedures. Eddie had expertly threaded the needle, keeping every contract just under the threshold. I pulled up the Foundation's vendor portal on my laptop. My internship credentials had expired, but I still remembered the public-facing reports any vendor could access. There it was, Brantley & Sons payment history. 16 contracts, $747,000 total over 9 months, all approved by various department heads, all with supporting documentation that included my forged signature as compliance review. The bastard's clever, Rowan said, reading over my shoulder, but not clever enough. Look at the dates. He was right. The contracts clustered in patterns 3 or 4 within the same week, then nothing for a month, like someone had taken a single large project and carved it into pieces. I screenshot everything, building a timeline. Then I cross-referenced it with my own calendar from the internship. 5 of the forged signatures were dated when I was documented as being in mandatory training sessions. 2 were from when I'd been at my grandmother's funeral in Oregon. I still had the airline receipts. Second thread, the digital footprints. The Foundation used DocuSign for official documents. Every signature generated a certificate with IP addresses, timestamps, and device information. I couldn't access the backend anymore, but I knew it kept those logs for 7 years. The forensics would be damning. My phone rang at 3 a.m., unknown number. Miss Hale. This is Thomas Prentice from the Foundation's legal team. I apologize for the hour, but Ms. Vale asked me to contact you immediately. I'm listening. We need you to preserve all evidence and documentation. Do not discuss this matter with anyone except authorized personnel. Can you come to our offices at 7 a.m.? I'll be there. One more thing, has anyone contacted you since the incident threats? Request to withdraw your complaint. Not yet. If they do, document everything. Do not engage. We're treating this as potential witness intimidation. After he hung up, I started phase 3 of my documentation, the paper trail that would prove I couldn't have signed those documents. You're scary when you're focused, Rowan observed, bringing me coffee. I learned from the best. I pulled up my archived timesheets. Remember when Dad made us document every hour of our summer jobs? Accountability starts with records, he used to say. Before he died, and Mom married the first asshole who showed interest, Rowan's voice turned bitter. At least Eddie's about to learn what accountability means. I found what I was looking for, my official internship timesheets, signed by Margaret Russo herself. They showed exactly where I was every hour I'd worked for the Foundation, cross-referenced with the forged signatures. They created an impossible timeline. I couldn't have reviewed bid documents while simultaneously conducting vendor audits in different buildings. By 5 a.m., I had a comprehensive package, 43 pages of evidence, organized by procurement violation type, contract splitting, signature forgery, false certifications, phantom equipment purchases. Each section included relevant regulations, supporting documents, and a clear chain of evidence. This is more than just fraud, I said, sitting back. This is a conspiracy. Someone inside Rookridge has been helping him. You think? I pulled up the approval signatures, different department heads, but one name appeared as secondary approver on 12 of the 16 contracts. Bradley Morrison, Assistant Director of Facilities Management. Found the inside man, I said. Morrison's been rubber stamping Eddie's contracts. Rowan leaned back. So when you send Eddie down, Morrison goes too. Everyone involved goes down. I saved encrypted copies of everything to 3 separate cloud drives. That's how compliance works. You don't just catch the criminal, you dismantle the entire system that enabled them. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Eddie's very upset. Please call me. We can work this out as a family. I showed Rowan. He snorted. Family. Right. Did family protect you tonight? Another text, this time from an unknown number. You have no idea what you're starting. Back off now or things get worse. And there's the threat Prentice warned about, I said, screenshotting it. You okay? I thought about it. My face hurt. My shoulder throbbed. My mother would probably never forgive me, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. I spent 6 years in that man's shadow, I said, watching him bully Mom, destroy her credit, isolate her from friends, make her financially dependent. I couldn't prove any of it was abuse, he was too careful. But this, I gestured at my laptop screen. This is provable. This is criminal. This is how I fight back. Rowan raised his coffee mug. To compliance, and revenge served with proper documentation. I clinked my mug against his. In 4 hours, I'd walk into the Foundation's offices with enough evidence to destroy Eddie Brantley's business, reputation, and freedom. He'd thought he was untouchable, protected by my silence and my mother's complicity. He was wrong. The Foundation's motto was carved in stone above their main entrance: integrity in all things. Eddie had forgotten that. He'd forgotten that institutions like Rookridge didn't survive for 150 years by letting contractors steal from them. Most of all, he'd forgotten that the quiet girl he'd pushed around for years had spent a summer learning exactly how to dismantle someone like him properly, legally, and thoroughly. As dawn broke over Wilder Springs, I uploaded my final document to the Foundation's secure server. Title: Comprehensive Fraud Analysis, Brantley & Sons Renovation, prepared by Marin Hale. Witness and victim. Time to show Eddie what compliance really meant. The Rookridge Foundation occupied the top 3 floors of a limestone building that predated the university itself. At 7 a.m. sharp, I walked through the marble lobby, my evidence bag feeling heavier than its actual weight. Thomas Prentice met me at the executive elevator, silver-haired, sharp-suited, with the kind of presence that made opposing counsel nervous. "Miss Hale, thank you for coming. Ms. Vale is waiting." The conference room could have hosted a state dinner. Alexandra Vale sat at the head of the table, flanked by Margaret Russo from compliance and a woman I didn't recognize, even at this early hour. Vale looked like she'd stepped from a boardroom photo shoot, steel gray hair and a perfect chignon. Navy suit that probably cost more than my car. "Marin," she gestured to a chair, "I've reviewed your initial report. Walk us through your findings." I spread out my documentation, organizing it by violation type. The fraud appears to have started 9 months ago. Shortly after I completed my internship, someone I believe Eddie Brantley obtained a digital copy of my signature and began applying it to procurement documents. "How?" Russo asked. I pulled out a highlighted form. This authorization for temporary lab equipment purchases. I signed it legitimately in July as part of a rush order for the chemistry department. The PDF was circulated to 5 people, including Bradley Morrison in facilities. That's the signature that appears on all the forged documents. The unknown woman leaned forward. "I'm Sandra Webb, internal audit. You're saying Morrison provided your signature?" "The evidence suggests a partnership. Morrison approves the contracts. My forged signature provides compliance cover, and Brantley performs minimal work for maximum payment." I laid out the contract splitting pattern. What should have been 3 major renovation projects became 16 minor ones, all structured to avoid competitive bidding. Vale studied the timeline. "The assault last night was that connected?" "I believe so. This purchase order," I showed them the $47,000 equipment list, "matches exactly with an invoice Brantley submitted last month. He was trying to retroactively purchase equipment he'd already been paid for." "Using my card," Vale said quietly. "He thought it was yours." "That's my assessment. He expected me to be intimidated into processing the transaction. When I refused, he resorted to violence." Prentice made notes. "Do you have the threatening texts?" I showed them the screenshots. Webb immediately noted the timestamp. "That number we can subpoena the carrier records." "What about your mother?" Russo asked gently. "Is she involved?" "Not in the fraud." I kept my voice steady. "She's a victim of different crimes." Vale's expression softened slightly. "We'll ensure she has resources. But right now, we need to stop the bleeding. Sandra." Webb pulled out a tablet. "I've already frozen all pending payments to Brantley & Sons. That's $127,000 in submitted invoices. Mr. Prentice has filed an emergency injunction to prevent any asset transfers." "And Morrison?" I asked. "Suspended pending investigation. As of," she checked her watch, 6 minutes ago. "Security is collecting his devices as we speak." Prentice slid a document across the table. "We need you to file a formal criminal complaint with the district attorney's office. This combines with your assault charges to establish a pattern of criminal behavior." I signed where he indicated. "What about the federal implications wire fraud, mail fraud?" "Already contacted the FBI's white-collar crime division," Webb said. "Turns out Mr. Brantley has state contracts too. Same pattern, different signatures." My phone buzzed. Mom again. Eddie's leaving for your apartment. Please don't do this. I showed Prentice. He immediately called campus security to dispatch units to my address. There's something else, I said. The equipment Eddie tried to buy it doesn't match any renovation needs. High-end electronics, specialized tools. I think he's been reselling. Webb's fingers flew over her tablet. That would explain the cash deposits. We flagged several suspicious transactions in his business accounts. Vale stood, signaling the meeting's end. Marin, you've shown exceptional courage and diligence. The Foundation will support you fully through this process. Mr. Prentice will coordinate with law enforcement. Dr. Russo will ensure your academic schedule isn't disrupted. And Ms. Webb will keep you informed of our findings. What about the other contracts? I asked. There could be more victims. We're auditing 5 years of procurement data, Webb assured me. Every contract Morrison touched, every vendor who benefited from split bidding, this won't end with Brantley. As I gathered my papers, Vale touched my shoulder. You were my scholarship recipient 3 years ago, top of your class in forensic accounting. You remember. I remember thinking you'd make an excellent addition to our compliance team. She smiled thinly. Consider this your practical exam. You've passed with distinction. Prentice escorted me out, handing me a business card. My direct line. Any contact from Brantley, Morrison, or their associates call immediately. We've also arranged a security detail for the next 72 hours. In the elevator, I finally let myself breathe. The machine was in motion now, Vale's machine. With centuries of institutional power behind it, Eddie had stolen from the wrong people. My phone rang. Rowan. You okay? Mom just called me screaming about betrayal and family loyalty. I'm fine. It's done. The Foundation is handling everything. Good, because Eddie just showed up at your building. He's pounding on your door, yelling about teaching you respect. I smiled grimly. Campus security should be arriving right about now. Sure enough, I heard sirens in the background of our call. Rowan laughed. 3 units. They're not messing around. The Foundation doesn't mess around. They're auditing 5 years of contracts. Holy shit. You didn't just burn him, you nuked the entire ecosystem. I thought about Eddie's face when he'd hit me. The casual violence of a man who'd never faced consequences. He made it personal when he forged my signature. But the Foundation, he made it institutional when he stole from them. What's next? Criminal charges get filed today. Asset freeze is already in place. By tomorrow, every contractor in the state will know Brantley & Sons is radioactive. And Mom? I paused at my car. Mom chose her side. She'll have to live with the consequences. As I drove away from the Foundation building, my phone pinged with an email from the university's PR department. They were preparing a statement about recent vendor irregularities and the Foundation's commitment to fiscal integrity. Eddie Brantley was about to become a cautionary tale told in procurement departments across the state. His business, built on intimidation and fraud, would collapse within days. All because he didn't know whose card he'd tried to steal. The next 36 hours taught me how vindictive a cornered man could be. It started with the voice messages. 17 of them, each more unhinged than the last. Eddie's greatest hits. I was ungrateful, vindictive, destroying my mother's happiness. Then came the legal threats his lawyer would sue me for defamation, for tortious interference, for whatever Latin phrases Eddie half remembered from TV shows. Rowan forwarded me screenshots from our mother's Facebook. She'd posted a lengthy screed about family betrayal and daughters who choose money over blood. The comments were a mix of sympathy and relatives quietly unfriending her. She's getting dragged in the comments, Rowan noted over dinner at his place. Aunt Patricia just posted Eddie's mugshot from the assault arrest. Since when does Aunt Patricia take my side? Since she Googled procurement fraud and realized Eddie's looking at federal charges, he scrolled through his phone. Oh, and Uncle Frank says he always knew Eddie was crooked. Convenient memory. My security detail. 2 off-duty cops the Foundation hired had already intercepted Eddie twice at my apartment building. The second time, he'd brought what he called muscle, two of his construction workers who quickly decided they didn't get paid enough to catch intimidation charges. But the real escalation came at 2:13 a.m. I woke to insistent buzzing from the apartment intercom. The security detail was changing shifts, leaving a 5-minute window. Eddie had been watching. Through the security camera feed on my phone, I watched him sweet-talk Mrs. Rodriguez in 3B, claiming he needed to leave an apology gift. She buzzed him in. Eddie could charm paint off walls when motivated. "Don't answer the door," Rowan said over the phone. I'd called him the moment I saw Eddie in the lobby. "I'm on my way." Eddie's pounding started 30 seconds later. "Open up, Marin. We need to talk about this like adults." I sat on my bed, recording everything on my phone while calling 911 on Rowan's tablet. "You're destroying everything. Your mother's crying herself sick. 40 years, I've been building this business." The 911 dispatcher confirmed units were en route. I kept recording. "Morrison already flipped, says it was all my idea. You think you're safe. You think that foundation bitch will protect you." That was new information. Morrison was cooperating. The pounding intensified. My neighbor across the hall opened his door. Jake, a law student who'd borrowed my textbooks last semester. "Hey man, it's 2 a.m. Take it down a notch. Mind your fucking business." I heard Jake's door slam, then his muffled voice calling security. Eddie's tone shifted, became almost pleading. "Marin, sweetie, I know I lost my temper, but we can fix this. Drop the charges. Tell them you were mistaken. I'll make it worth your while. 20,000 cash. 30? I texted Prentice. He's offering bribes, recording everything. 50,000. Marin, clean money? You could finish your MBA without working nights?" The sirens were getting closer. "Answer me." Something heavy hit my door, his shoulder. Probably. The frame held, but barely. Then Rowan's voice in the hallway. "Touch that door again and I'll break your fucking arm." The prodigal son. Eddie's laugh was ugly. "Come to protect baby sister. Where were you when she was filing false reports?" False. Rowan's voice was dangerously calm. Like those signatures, like the invoices, like the contracts you split to avoid oversight. Silence. Then, "You don't know shit. I know Morrison's been singing since yesterday morning. I know the FBI seized your computers. I know First National froze not just your business accounts, but your personal ones too. How do you—" "Because unlike you, I actually read the news. Check the Tribune's website. Your photo's on the front page of the business section." The police arrived, then 3 units, lights blazing. I finally opened my door to find Eddie in cuffs, Rowan holding a baseball bat he'd apparently grabbed from his car, and Jake filming everything on his phone. "Ma'am, are you all right?" The lead officer recognized me from the campus incident. "I'm fine." He was trying to break in. Offered me bribes to drop the charges. It's all recorded. Eddie stared at me with pure hatred. "You vindictive little bitch. You've destroyed everything." "No," I said quietly. "You destroyed everything. I just documented it." As they led him away, my phone rang. Prentice. "We heard about the incident. Are you safe?" "Yes. He offered me 50,000 to recant." "Outstanding. Witness tampering. Attempted bribery. He's just adding years to his sentence." He paused. "Morrison gave us everything. Names, dates, kickback amounts. Brantley was paying him 15% of every contract value. There were others. 6 contractors total. Morrison was running a nice little side business selling access. The foundation is pursuing criminal charges against all of them." After the police left, Rowan walked me back to his place. "You're staying with me until this settles. Non-negotiable." I didn't argue. My apartment door had boot marks and splintered wood around the lock. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving me shaky. "You know what the ironic part is?" I said, slumping on his couch. "If he'd just left me alone, he might have gotten away with it. The forgeries were good. Morrison covered his tracks well. They could have run this scam for years. But he couldn't resist throwing his weight around," Rowan finished. Typical Eddie, his ego was always bigger than his brain. My phone buzzed. An email from Sandra Webb. Preliminary audit complete. Total fraud amount, $1.7 million across 6 contractors. Criminal referrals filed for all parties. Your diligence has saved the foundation significant funds. The board has authorized a reward under our whistleblower policy. Details to follow. Jesus. Rowan read over my shoulder. You're getting paid for this. Standard whistleblower provision. Up to 10% of recovered funds. He did the math. That's us. Enough to finish my MBA without loans, without working nights, without ever being vulnerable to someone like Eddie again. The irony was perfect. Eddie's fraud would pay for the education that helped me expose him. His attempt to control me had given me the ultimate independence. What about Mom? Rowan asked. I thought about her tears, her enabling, her choice to stand by a man who'd hurt both her children. She made her bed. The foundation mentioned resources, victim services, counseling, legal aid for the divorce. If she wants help, it's there. And if she doesn't, then she can visit Eddie in federal prison. Conjugal visits aren't allowed, but she can hold his hand through security glass. It was harsh, but I was done cushioning the consequences of other people's choices. Done staying quiet to keep an artificial peace. Done pretending violence was acceptable if it came wrapped in family ties. The next morning's Tribune ran Eddie's photo under the headline, Construction Executive Charged in 1.7 M University Fraud Scheme. Nowhere in the article did it mention he was my stepfather. I was identified only as a graduate student and bookstore employee who reported the irregularities. That anonymity was another gift from the foundation. They understood that justice didn't require me to be publicly tied to Eddie's crimes forever. But Eddie would be tied to them. Every background check, every Google search, every business inquiry would find this story. His reputation, built over 40 years, had crumbled in 36 hours. All because he didn't know whose card he'd tried to steal. The preliminary hearing was set for a Thursday morning in the sterile fluorescent reality of Courtroom 4B. I arrived early with Prentice, wearing my most conservative suit, the one I'd bought for internship interviews, now serving a darker purpose. Eddie sat at the defendant's table looking diminished. Orange jumpsuit, cuffed wrists, public defender shuffling papers beside him. His hair, usually slicked back with expensive gel, hung limp. When he saw me, his jaw clenched, but the bailiff's presence kept him seated. The purpose of today's hearing, Judge Patricia Henley announced, is to address the emergency protective order, bail modifications, and preliminary evidence in the matter of State v. Edward Brantley. The prosecutor, Assistant DA Maria Santana, stood. Your Honor, we're also addressing the related financial fraud charges, which have federal implications. The defendant faces 17 counts of procurement fraud, forgery, witness tampering, and assault. Let's start with the protective order, Judge Henley said. Ms. Hale. I took the witness stand, my hands steady despite the weight of Eddie's stare. Santana walked me through the bookstore assault, the midnight apartment incident, the bribes. I kept my voice clinical, treating it like a financial audit, just facts, documented evidence, clear timelines. Ms. Hale, Eddie's public defender began his cross-examination. Isn't it true you harbored resentment toward Mr. Brantley due to family conflicts? I harbored resentment toward anyone forging my signature on fraudulent documents, I replied evenly. But this is your stepfather. Surely family disputes. Objection, Santana cut in. Relevance family relationship doesn't justify assault or fraud. Sustained. The defender tried another angle. The business contracts in question, you weren't even employed by the foundation when most were signed. Which is exactly how I know the signatures were forged, I said. I couldn't have approved documents when I wasn't working there. Prentice was called next, presenting the foundation's evidence with prosecutorial precision. He laid out the procurement scheme like a professor teaching a masterclass in fraud. The defendant created artificial scarcity by dividing single projects into multiple contracts. Example, the Morrison Hall renovation, budgeted at $150,000, became 4 separate contracts of $49,750. $49, $900, $48, $500, and $1,850. How did this benefit the defendant? Judge Henley asked. Each split avoided competitive bidding requirements. The defendant charged approximately 30% above market rate due to lack of competition. Total overage $521,000 across all contracts. The coup de grace came when Santana introduced the digital evidence. The IT specialist from Rookridge explained the signature authentication process. Every DocuSign generates a unique certificate, IP addresses, device fingerprints, timestamp data. The signatures attributed to Ms. Hale originated from IP addresses registered to Brantley & Sons office network. Could someone else at that office have created these signatures? The defender asked desperately. The device fingerprint matches the defendant's computer, same machine used to submit the invoices. Judge Henley looked increasingly grim as evidence mounted. Then came Morrison's video deposition he'd flipped completely, detailing the kickback scheme with the fervor of the newly converted. Eddie approached me last year. Morrison's recorded voice filled the courtroom. Said he could make my retirement comfortable if I helped him navigate the bidding process. 15% of every contract. I didn't know about the signature forgeries until later. During a recess, my mother appeared. She looked aged, hollow eyes, hair uncombed, wearing the same blazer I'd seen her wear to 3 Christmases. She approached while Eddie was being led to the holding area. "Marin, please," she whispered. "You don't understand what you're doing. He's not perfect, but he's my husband, our family." "We stopped being a family when he hit me," I said quietly. "When you stood behind him and watched, when you chose his lies over your children's safety. That's not fair." "Fair." My voice rose slightly. "Was it fair when he tried to force me to co-sign his loans? When he isolated you from your siblings? When he forged my signature and made me an accomplice to fraud?" Rowan materialized beside me. "Come on, Colleen. You made your choice. Live with it." She looked between us, her 2 children, united against her husband. "I'll lose everything." "No," I said. "You'll lose Eddie. The foundation has victim resources, divorce lawyers, financial counseling. You could rebuild, but you have to choose." She turned away, returning to sit behind Eddie's defense table, still choosing him. When court resumed, Santana presented the financial impact analysis. The fraud extended beyond Rookridge. Mr. Brantley used the same methods with 3 state contracts and 2 municipal projects. Total fraud across all entities, $2.3 million. The defender made one last attempt. "Your Honor, Mr. Brantley is a respected businessman with 40 years. 40 years of what?" Judge Henley interrupted. "The evidence shows systematic fraud, forgery, and violence when confronted. Ms. Hale, please retake the stand." I returned to the witness chair. "You're seeking a protective order. Why should I grant it?" I looked directly at her, not at Eddie. "Because he escalated from financial crimes to physical violence when exposed. Because he attempted to bribe and intimidate me. Because I believe he'll continue escalating if given access." "Mr. Brantley." Judge Henley addressed him directly. "Do you have anything to say?" Eddie stood slowly. For a moment, I thought he might apologize, show remorse, do something to salvage the situation. Instead, "This is a vendetta. She's always hated me, jealous of my success, my relationship with her mother. She fabricated evidence to—" "Mr. Brantley," Judge Henley cut him off. "Are you actually claiming the IT forensics, the video evidence, the witness testimony, and the financial records are all fabricated?" "I'm saying she orchestrated this to—" "Sit down." The final ruling was swift, protective order granted. Bail revoked due to witness tampering. Federal charges recommended. Asset freeze continued pending full forensic accounting. "Ms. Hale," Judge Henley addressed me before adjourning. "The court recognizes the courage required to report financial crimes, especially involving family members. Your documentation was exemplary." As Eddie was led away in shackles, he turned back one last time. The look he gave me should have been frightening pure rage mixed with disbelief that I'd actually fought back. Instead, I felt only relief. The man who'd terrorized my family for 6 years was going to federal prison. His business would be liquidated to pay restitution. His reputation was destroyed. Outside the courthouse, Alexandra Vale waited by a town car. "Well done, Ms. Hale. The board is impressed by your composure." "What happens now?" "Now Mr. Brantley faces trial. The other contractors scramble for plea deals, and the foundation implements new controls based on your discoveries." She paused. "We're creating a full-time compliance analyst position. Interested?" I looked back at the courthouse where my mother still lingered, lost and alone by her own choices. Then at Rowan, who'd stood by me when it mattered. "Very interested," I said. "Excellent. We'll discuss details once your degree is complete. Which reminds me, check your student account. The whistleblower reward has been processed." As her car pulled away, I opened my phone. The number in my account made me sit down on the courthouse steps. $230,000. 10% of the recovered fraud. As promised. "Holy shit," Rowan said, reading over my shoulder. "Eddie's going to know," I said. "When he finds out his fraud is paying for my future." "He'll know he lost completely," Rowan grinned. "Come on, let's get lunch. You're buying." As we walked away from the courthouse, I thought about the card reader's beep that had started everything. Such a small sound, but it had revealed so much Eddie's crimes. Morrison's corruption, my mother's complicity, and my own strength. Eddie had been right about one thing: I had orchestrated his downfall. But he'd handed me the baton when he didn't know whose card he'd tried to steal. The final devastation came in waves, each more complete than the last. First, the forensic audit results. Sandra Webb called me personally to share the findings before they went public. "We found everything. Marin, digital manipulation software on his computer, template files of forged signatures, not just yours. He'd been planning to expand." "Expand how?" 12 other employee signatures captured from various documents. He was building a library. Your intervention stopped what could have become a $10 million fraud ring. The FBI raid on Brantley & Sons made the evening news. Federal agents carrying boxes of evidence, computers, filing cabinets. The reporter noted that several current construction projects had been halted mid-build, leaving bare foundations and half-finished frames across the city. Santana called next. "Search warrant paid off. We found the signature stamp kit in his home office. Physical stamps made from digital signatures. He was analog backing his digital fraud." "That's thorough." "Gets better, or worse, for him. His office manager just flipped. Says Eddie's been running this playbook for 15 years. Just never got caught before. We're reopening every public contract he's touched." The dominoes fell fast after that. First National Bank didn't just freeze accounts, they called in every loan. 3 equipment liens, 2 property mortgages, 1 line of credit, all due immediately. Without cash flow from the frozen contracts, Eddie couldn't make a single payment. I watched from Rowan's apartment as local news covered the company auction. Excavators, trucks, tools, 40 years of accumulated assets sold to satisfy creditors. The auctioneer's hammer fell again and again, each strike erasing another piece of Eddie's empire. "Look at Mom." Rowan pointed at the screen. She stood at the edge of the crowd, watching strangers buy her husband's legacy for pennies on the dollar. Then came the professional licenses. The state contractors board held an emergency hearing. I didn't need to testify, the criminal charges were enough. They pulled his license permanently, along with those of his 2 sons who'd been junior partners. 3 generations of Brantley builders, ended with a unanimous vote. Morrison's testimony, now public record, revealed the full network. 6 contractors, 3 city inspectors, 2 state procurement officers. The corruption ran deep, but Eddie had been the biggest fish. Local media dubbed it the Foundation Fraud Ring, with Eddie's mugshot as the lead image. The Rookridge Foundation wasn't done. They filed civil suits against every implicated contractor, seeking triple damages under the False Claims Act. Eddie's share alone $5.1 million. With his assets liquidated and no ability to work, It was essentially a life sentence of debt. Alexandra Vale made a rare public statement. The Rookridge Foundation has zero tolerance for those who steal from education. Every dollar recovered will fund scholarships for deserving students. Students like Marin Hale, whose integrity exposed this massive fraud. My phone rang constantly, reporters wanting interviews, prosecutors from other jurisdictions finding similar patterns. 3 universities asked me to review their procurement systems. The state attorney general's office offered me a job on the spot. "You're famous," Rowan said, scrolling through LinkedIn. "Look, you're trending in forensic accounting circles." But I wasn't celebrating, not yet, not until the final piece fell into place. It happened on a Tuesday. Mom called from a number I didn't recognize. "I'm at Rachel's," she said quietly. My Aunt Rachel, who'd cut contact when Mom defended Eddie's business practices at a family dinner. "Okay. I filed the papers today. Divorce. Rachel's lawyer says I might be able to keep the house since it's premarital property." "That's good. Mom, is it—" Her voice cracked. "I lost everything. My husband, my home life, my children's respect." "You lost Eddie," I corrected. "Everything else is still available if you want it." Silence. Then, "The foundation contacted me, said there's a victim advocate program, financial counseling, support groups for families of white-collar criminals. Will you go?" "My first appointment is Thursday." She paused. Would you consider coming? The counselor said family sessions might help." I looked at Rowan. He shrugged my choice. "Maybe, after you've done some individual work first." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a crack in the door. The final blow came during Eddie's federal sentencing. I sat in the gallery beside Rowan, Prentice, and Webb. Eddie, now in federal custody for 8 months, looked gaunt. The orange jumpsuit hung loose. His lawyer made perfunctory arguments for leniency. First offense technically true. Criminally speaking, age, health concerns. Judge Catherine Chen, no relation, wasn't moved. "Mr. Brantley, you held a position of trust in this community. Families depended on your integrity. Instead, you systematically defrauded institutions dedicated to education and public service. You corrupted public officials. When caught, you resorted to violence and witness intimidation." She continued, "Your fraud directly impacted scholarship funds, building maintenance budgets, and student services. You stole from young people trying to better themselves through education. Your actions show a fundamental contempt for the public good." The sentence: 12 years federal, no parole, lifetime ban on public contracts, restitution of $5.1 million to be garnished from any future earnings, forfeiture of all assets obtained through fraud. Eddie turned as they led him away, scanning the gallery. His eyes found mine. For a second, I saw him consider saying something. Then his lawyer whispered urgently, and he faced forward, shuffling out in shackles. "It's over," Rowan said. That night, I returned to my apartment for the first time since the door incident. New locks, reinforced frame, security system all covered by the Victims' Compensation Fund. I stood in my kitchen, making tea in my own space, finally free from looking over my shoulder. My phone buzzed, a notification from the university registrar. "Congratulations. Your tuition payment has been processed in full. Balance 0 cent. The whistleblower reward, paying for the education that Eddie tried to prevent. His fraud funding my future. The poetry of justice." I opened my laptop and started working on my thesis, Internal Controls and Procurement Fraud, a Case Study in Institutional Failure and Reform. My advisor had already approved it, calling it the most thoroughly documented thesis proposal I've ever seen. 3 months later, I walked across the stage at graduation, MBA in hand, job offer from the foundation confirmed, and a consulting contract with the State Attorney General's office for procurement reform. From my seat on stage, I saw Mom in the audience. Smaller somehow, but present. She'd completed her counseling program, gotten a job at a dental office, started rebuilding. We had coffee sometimes now. Small steps. Eddie would watch his company's final dissolution from federal prison. The last Brantley & Sons sign came down the week I graduated. The building sold to satisfy creditors. Local news covered it briefly, a footnote to the larger scandal. Morrison got 3 years, lost his pension. The other contractors took plea deals. The corruption network collapsed entirely, replaced by automated systems and mandatory rotation policies I'd helped design. But the moment that marked the true end came later. In a small conference room at the foundation, Alexandra Vale slid a business card across the table. Maren Hale, Director of Compliance Analytics, Rookridge Foundation. Director. I blinked. The posting was for senior analyst. The board felt your qualifications warranted an adjustment. She smiled. Your starting salary is double what Eddie claimed to make in his best year. I thought you should know that. I thought of that night in the bookstore. The beep of the card reader. His fist connecting with my cheek. The certainty in his voice when he'd said I was fucking useless. Thank you, I said, taking the card. I won't let you down. I know, Vale said simply. You've already proved that. As I left the foundation building, my new office keys in hand, I passed a crew installing updated security cameras in the lobby. The contractor's van read, Meridian Construction, one of the companies that had taken over Eddie's abandoned contracts. They'd finished on time and under budget. The foreman nodded professionally as I passed. He didn't know who I was. Didn't know that his thriving business existed partly because I'd removed a corrupt competitor. That anonymity felt perfect. I wasn't the girl who'd brought down Eddie Brantley anymore. I was the director who'd make sure no one like him ever got the chance again. The card reader at the employee entrance beeped as I swiped my new badge. Such a small sound. Such massive consequences. Eddie had been wrong about so many things, but mostly, he'd been wrong about whose card he'd tried to steal. Not mine, never really mine. Alexandra Vale's card had just been the weapon. The real theft he'd attempted was of my future, my name, my integrity. Instead, he'd handed me everything. The morning of Eddie's sentencing finalization arrived with unexpected clarity, one of those crisp autumn days that made Wilder Springs look like a university brochure. I stood in my new office at the foundation, reviewing the final prosecution summary when Santana called. Thought you should know Eddie's last appeal was denied. He's being transferred to federal facility in Victorville tomorrow. It's done. Maren. Completely done. I thanked her and hung up, staring out at the campus where everything had started. Below, students rushed between classes, clutching overpriced textbooks from the same bookstore where Eddie had sealed his fate. That evening, I met Rowan at our father's grave, something we'd started doing monthly since Eddie's arrest. The headstone read simply, Marcus Hale, beloved father, teacher of integrity. Dad would have been proud, Rowan said, placing fresh flowers. You fought smart, not angry. I had good teachers, I replied, thinking of both our father and Margaret Rousseau, who'd taught me that revenge was best served with documentation. As we walked back to our cars, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number with a prison facility code. Eddie's final message, sent through the federal system. You destroyed a good man's life over nothing. I hope you're satisfied. I showed Rowan. He actually laughed. Good man. He still doesn't get it? No, I agreed, deleting the message. He never will. The next weeks brought unexpected ripples. 3 other universities hired me to audit their procurement systems after the Rookridge scandal. I found similar patterns at each, not as extensive as Eddie's operation, but enough to save millions in potential fraud. My consulting fees went straight into a scholarship fund I established, the Marcus Hale Integrity Award for first-generation college students. Mom and I had coffee on the 6-month anniversary of Eddie's sentencing. She looked healthier, the hollow anxiety replaced by something quieter but more genuine. I got my first paycheck from the dental office, she said, sliding the stub across the table. It's not much, but it's mine, earned honestly. That's all that matters. She hesitated. Then, I've been thinking about that night at the bookstore. I stood there, watched him hit you, did nothing. Mom. No, I need to say this. I chose him over my children, over what was right. I'll carry that forever. She met my eyes. But I'm grateful you were stronger than me. Your courage saved us both, even if I didn't deserve saving. It wasn't full reconciliation, some wounds cut too deep for simple healing, but it was truth, finally spoken aloud. The epilogue wrote itself over the following year. The Foundation's new procurement system, which I designed, became a nationwide model. The Department of Justice cited it in new federal guidelines. Universities across the country adopted variations, closing loopholes that had enabled decades of fraud. Eddie served his time in obscurity. His sons relocated to different states, changed their business names, started over. The Brantley construction legacy ended not with a bang but with a whimper, a footnote in forensic accounting textbooks. Morrison died of a heart attack 8 months into his sentence. The other contractors served minimal time but never recovered professionally. The corruption network was so thoroughly destroyed that procurement fraud in the state dropped by 60%. Alexandra Vale retired the following year, but not before ensuring my position was permanent and my work expanded. At her farewell dinner, she pulled me aside. "I've seen many frauds exposed in my career," she said, "but I've never seen someone turn personal trauma into systemic reform with such precision. You didn't just stop a criminal, you fixed a broken system." On the first anniversary of Eddie's sentencing, I stood once more in the campus bookstore. They'd reinforced the cameras, added panic buttons, implemented new cash handling procedures, all changes I'd recommended. The evening shift manager, a grad student like I'd been, waved cheerfully. I bought a single item, a leather-bound planner for the upcoming year. As the card reader beeped that sound that started everything, I felt only calm. No flashbacks, no anger, just the quiet satisfaction of a job completed. That night, I received an unexpected email. A young woman named Sarah, a freshman at a state school 2 hours away. She'd received the Marcus Hale Integrity Award and wanted to thank me. Her story echoed mine, first-generation student, working nights, family members who saw her education as betrayal rather than achievement. "Your scholarship isn't just money," she wrote. "It's proof that integrity matters, that doing right beats doing easy. Thank you for showing us that fighting back doesn't require fists, just facts." I printed the email and filed it in a folder marked "Why We Fight." It joined dozens of similar messages from students, prosecutors, and compliance officers who'd used the Rookridge scandal as a catalyst for change. Eddie Brantley thought he'd stolen from a university. He'd actually robbed himself of everything: freedom, family, fortune, and future. His 12-year sentence was just the beginning. His true punishment was watching from a federal cell as the world moved on without him. Better for his absence. I kept the newspaper clipping of his sentencing in my desk drawer, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Evil often comes not with horns and pitchforks, but with procurement forms and family ties. It counts on our silence, our exhaustion, our misplaced loyalty. But it forgets that some of us were raised by fathers who taught integrity, trained by mentors who valued documentation, and forged in fires that burned away everything except the will to fight back properly. Eddie never knew whose card he'd tried to steal that night. In the end, it didn't matter. He'd stolen enough from institutions, from taxpayers, from students who needed those funds. My intervention was just the universe balancing its books, using the tools Eddie himself had provided: evidence, systems, and the kind of procedural justice that leaves no room for escape. As I locked my office that anniversary night, I thought about the girl who'd been struck down in a bookstore, too shocked to immediately fight back. She'd learned something valuable in that moment of violence. True power isn't in the fist that strikes, but in the system that strikes back, methodically and finally. The campus was quiet as I walked to my car. Autumn leaves crunching underfoot. Somewhere in California, Eddie Brantley was settling in for another night in federal custody, counting down days that would stretch into years. And somewhere in Wilder Springs, a young woman named Marin Hale was building a career on the foundation of his crimes, turning his brutality into her brightest triumph. He'd been right about one thing in his final message. I was satisfied. Completely, utterly, professionally satisfied. The card reader had beeped, the hammer had fallen, justice had been served. And that was enough. Thank you for listening to this story of justice and redemption. I'd love to hear where you're listening from. Drop a comment below, and let's share our thoughts on Marin's journey. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. And if you want more people to discover this tale of standing up against corruption and abuse, please hit the hype button to help spread the word. Your support helps these important stories reach those who need to hear them most.